Hey, soulmates, so much to discuss with you as always on this Tuesday, January 31st. We want to welcome you to Fox Soul's Black Report. I am Courtney Hicks.
And I'm Nicolai Corte. We are honored to stand behind this desk each day to take you on a journey across Black America and the stories that impact our people.
We're dedicated to bring you our news, our views, and our voice. So let's tap into today's top story. Of course, in Memphis, 2 fire department emergency medical workers and a driver have now been fired following the death of Tyre Nichols. They joined the 5 Memphis police officers who have been charged with second-degree murder. The EMTs were called to the scene due to a, quote, person pepper sprayed call. But officials say instead of rendering aid, they failed to, quote, conduct an adequate patient assessment of Nichols. The fire chief says it was not a difficult decision to make sense. They all violated multiple department policies and protocols.
Meanwhile, 2 more Memphis police officers are now under investigation after the deadly beating of Tyre Nichols. Police on Monday named one of the 2 officers, Preston Hemphill, who is white, and said he's been on administrative leave since the beginning of the investigation. Memphis police spokesperson Kimberly Elder declined to say whether Hemphill is being paid. Hemphill has not been charged. He was never present at the second scene that escalated to the beating, and Hemphill has been cooperating with the investigation. Legal experts say that over time there could be more charges coming in the case.
And that Tyre Nichols video is reviving urgent calls for Congress to pass a police reform law. Now, the Congressional Black Caucus is requesting a meeting with President Biden to push for negotiations on federal police reform. Back in 2021, the House passed the George Floyd Justice Policing Act, that is. But the bill stalled in the Senate after bipartisan negotiations, led in part by Senators Tim Scott and Cory Booker, fell apart.
As the world continues to react to the tragedy of Tyre Nichols, a GoFundMe page started by Nichols' mother has surpassed $1.2 million. The page was launched just 3 days ago by Nichols' mother, Rovon Wells. She says that she created the page to raise money for mental health services for the Nichols family and to build a skate park in her son's memory. She wrote on the page, quotes, "My baby was just trying to make it home to be safe in my arms. Tyre was unarmed, non-threatening, and respectful to police during the entire encounter." And, you know, Courtney, this is just a heartbreaking sign of the times. You know, we're not even a full month into the new year. And we've seen so many of these GoFundMe accounts being set up. I'm thinking back to the GoFundMe account that was set up by the family of Keenan Anderson in Los Angeles, and too many more to count.
Yeah, and you know, the details, the horrifying details, the backstories just keep coming by way of family members, you know, and his mother. And when, you know, as people continue to view the video and you put piece by piece together, and just the cries and the pleading and the fact that he was, you know, fleeing, you know, you could really come to the conclusion that he was fleeing for his life, and he felt threatened, and he was headed home, only 80 yards from his home. He was trying to get home, I agree, to the safety of his mother and the safety of homes. And they're just, you know, putting out reports now that the Floyd family will be attending Tyre Nichols' funeral services that I do believe are being held tomorrow, just in support. And those 2 families, you know, coming together, you know, in an effort to bring about this awareness, to push through legislation. I know the Nichols family has been invited to come to D.C. to sit down with President Biden to further along these policies that we're hoping will cure, if you will, situations, address and cure, and bring it into situations like this. But like you said, those details that just keep coming out just make a heartbreaking situation even more heartbreaking, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. And somebody who knows a whole lot about heartbreak, Reverend Al Sharpton, has been asked to eulogize Tyre Nichols. I'm thinking back to the eulogy of George Floyd, where Reverend Sharpton also performed that. And so we'll continue to keep our eye on this developing story.
Yes, he will. So we will. A former Louisville police officer blamed for instigating a deadly shooting during the 2020 protests over the death of Breonna Taylor will will not serve time in prison. 30-year-old Katie R. Cruz pleaded guilty last year to one count of using excessive force during a curfew crackdown in 2020 that ended with the fatal shooting of restaurant owner David McAtee. The judge over the case called Cruz's actions incredibly dangerous and doubled her 1-year recommended probation period to 2 years. The judge said he was reluctant to allow Cruz to avoid prison time, but was told that the family's victim had given their blessing to the recommended sentence.
The parents of a 9-month-old baby who died while under the care of a Florida center has reached a settlement in their case. Little Tavon Tomlin was found unresponsive at Lincoln Marty Daycare Center in Miami. Tavon's parents, Kira Worley and Devontae Tomlin, filed a lawsuit over his death, accusing Lincoln Marty of, quote, incompetence, poor training, and inadequate staffing. According to court papers, the center admitted to knowingly violating Florida laws. Meanwhile, his parents are still seeking answers on what exactly happened. They had to drop the lawsuit as part of the $5 million settlement. However, the parents say that they wish there would be a reform on daycare center protocols to prevent it from happening again.
Oh my goodness, just a tragic story there. To St. Louis now, where the city will pay nearly $5.2 million to settle claims by people who were arrested during a protest back in 2017 over the acquittal of a police officer in the shooting death of a black man. Now, according to a proposed class action settlement filed last week, the city agreed to pay $4.91 million, or about $58,500 per person, to 84 people who were protesting in downtown St. Louis. The lawsuit claimed the protesters' rights were violated when they were caught in what they call a police kettle, as officers surrounded and arrested everyone in the area. 3 people who filed individual lawsuits settled from $85,000 each. The city denied any wrongdoing as a part of that settlement, and the settlement proposal must now be approved by a judge.
The state of Louisiana is making headlines after corrections officials are now on notice from federal authorities for unconstitutionally keeping inmates behind bars past their sentences. According to federal prosecutors, Louisiana Department of Corrections has been on notice about chronic overdetentions for more than a decade, but has failed to correct the problem. Louisiana residents are paying the cost for overdetentions. According to the Department of Justice, the corrections facility had to pay parish jails at least $850,000 in fees for overdetaining inmates in the first 4 months of 2022. Now, each year, overdetentions amounted to more than $2.5 million. The New York Times reported last year that about 200 inmates in Louisiana were held beyond their sentences each month.
And the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, is calling out new legislation that he says resembles apartheid. Chokwe Lumumba says that the new court system that would be run by unelected judges is racially motivated and would impact the city of Jackson the most. The proposal for this new court system comes from legislators who live outside of the 80% black city. In addition to the proposal for a new court system, Lumumba also criticized a bill that would transfer ownership of Jackson's water system to a new public entity overseen by a 9-member board, the majority of which would be appointed by state leaders.
Here in Detroit, the city's mayor, Mike Duggan, is unveiling a plan to get more Detroiters back to work. It's a program getting people trained for better jobs. The mayor saying the best way to use the funding from the American Rescue Act is by investing in the people of Detroit. Fox 2's Dave Kinchin shows us what it's all about.
That was a big deal. That was one of the proudest moments, to walk across stage with my kids in the audience. So, thank you.
Octavia fighting back tears while opening up about difficult moments in her life in a packed meeting on job training and access hosted by Mayor Mike Duggan at the Coleman A. Young Municipal Center.
I dropped out of high school in 2004. I wound up getting pregnant. I went to Redford High School. On top of being pregnant, my daughter's father got killed. So it was hard. I made many attempts to go back to school and just didn't do it.
Until getting connected with the city's Learn to Earn program, working her way to a diploma and a job. She's one of many endorsing the mayor's announcement of a $100 million scholarship program to get more Detroit residents ready for and connected to more jobs.
We wanted to have a city where every person who wanted to get a good paying job could get one, and the jobs in Detroit went to Detroiters.
The initiative, backed by President Biden's American Rescue Plan, will pay residents to study and train for the work they want. In fact, the mayor says right now there are about 9,000 jobs up for grabs across the city, and half of them do not require a college degree. Some programs pay $10 an hour to learn basic reading and math skills and or get a high school diploma or GED.
You can start this month and make $200 a week learning to read.
Some of the training even allows city residents to earn $15 an hour for 3 days of on-site work and 2 days of in-classroom training per week to get qualified for careers ranging from healthcare, IT, the skilled trades, trucking, and more. But there were some residents in this meeting who say this plan sounds great and all, but so far they've been left behind by the city. In fact, one woman told the mayor that directly, pouring her heart out.
I have a great nephew that has been applying for these jobs for 6 months. And the man never emailed back. My nephew graduated from high school. He can read fluently.
The mayor took the heat, but promised a quick fix.
So here's what we're going to do. He's not going to have to come to us. Tomorrow, we're going to go out and see him.
DetroitAtWork.com is the website with information on this program. We'll link to it on our website, fox2detroit.com. The mayor and administration, they say right now city unemployment is under 7%. They believe this investment, this program, can drive that down even further. Outside the city county building in downtown Detroit, Dave Kinchin, Fox 2 News.
Our thanks to Dave Kinchin for that report. This is an example of federal policy that actually makes a material difference in the lives of everyday people. I really appreciated that the mayor of Detroit was very clear in the choice to invest in people, right? We can invest in infrastructure over the long run that will benefit our communities, but investing in people, that helps right now, that creates relief right now. And it makes me think back to, one of my first jobs out of college was working as a field deputy to an LA school board member. And at the time, I remember it was considered cutting edge, this idea of concurrent enrollment, this idea of being able to get your certification in a trade and your high school diploma so that, students graduated with as many options as possible. And so it's good to see folks like the mayor investing in programs like that.
Yeah, I was going to mention that trade schools. I think that was one of the biggest mistakes, in the world. I have girlfriends who, came out with cosmetology degrees coming out of high school. Friends who came out with degrees in heating, or training rather, in heating and cooling, or were well on their way to maybe graduate to a apprenticeship program with having that training right there in high school. Because higher education, going to college just isn't for everybody. And we need folks to fill those jobs as well. And for cities like Detroit, where we've always been a blue collar industrial town, that is just not the lifestyle anymore. It's just not an option anymore. The big three are not hiring like they used to. That used to be a solid way to, make a good living coming out of high school, throwing a little overtime. You were doing well, really, really well. That just isn't the case anymore. So, I think go back to even prior to these programs and put these trade schools back in high schools so these young people have more of an option and more training as they graduate.
I think you make a brilliant point, Courtney, that really it's about college and career training, right? And so not everybody's going to go off to a 4-year college or university, and if so, maybe not right away. And so having these sorts of career training that have made a difference in places like Detroit, places here in the Midwest, can make a difference yet again. And so big ups to the mayor of Detroit and everybody that had a hand in making this fund available to Detroiters. It's going to make a big difference.
I believe so.
Yeah. Still ahead, over 1,000 flights canceled overnight.
Crazy what this means for travelers like yourself and what's been done to fix this problem. That and more when we come back. You're watching Fox Soul's Black Report.